At 12:07 in the afternoon, when the sun was bright enough to make every window in the street look like a sheet of fire, my phone rang with a name I had not seen in almost 3 years. For a second, I thought grief had learned how to dial numbers, because the screen said, Mrs. Syra. My ex-wife's mother. The woman who had once looked at me across a courtroom hallway with tired eyes and said, "Some people are only meant to love from far away." I almost let it ring out. Then I answered, and her voice came through broken, breathless, and terrified. She said, "I'm trapped, come help me." Before this story continues, if you believe kindness can survive heartbreak, if you believe second chances sometimes arrive in the strangest ways, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Asian Anesctory. Your support helps stories like this reach people who still believe the heart can heal. My name is Ayaan Mir. 3 years ago, I was married to a woman named Meher. We did not end because of one big betrayal. We ended slowly, in little silences, in missed dinners, in pride, in words we sharpened when we should have softened them. Her mother, Syra, had loved me like a son in the beginning. She would save the crispest parathas for me, press extra mango pickle onto my plate, and say a man who worked hard should never eat like a guest in his own home. But divorce has a way of burning bridges even innocent people are standing on. After Meher left, Syra stopped calling. I told myself it was better that way. But when I heard fear in that woman's voice, all the old hurt stepped aside. I asked where she was, and she gasped that she was inside her old house, the back storage room, the door jammed shut, smoke coming from somewhere, her chest hurting. The line crackled. Then she whispered something that froze my blood, "Please don't call Meher yet. She'll panic. Just come." I was already grabbing my keys. The drive across the city felt unreal. It was daytime, brutally bright, traffic loud, fruit sellers shouting under faded umbrellas, schoolchildren crossing roads with bags too heavy for their shoulders. But inside my car, everything was cold. I remembered Syra's house in Gulberg, the jasmine vines by the gate, the blue ceramic pot she was proud of, the kitchen window where she used to wave when I picked up Meher after work. I had not been there since the divorce papers were signed. When I reached, smoke was leaking from the side of the house like a secret trying to escape. Not a roaring fire, but enough to make the neighbors gather at a distance, worried and useless. I ran through the unlocked gate, shouting her name. The house smelled of burnt plastic and old wood. Somewhere, a smoke alarm cried weakly, as if it too was tired. I found the storage room at the back. The door would not move. From inside, Syra coughed and hit the wood with her palm. I threw my shoulder into it once, twice, 3 times. Pain shot through my arm, but the door only groaned. I grabbed an iron rod from the courtyard, wedged it near the latch, and pulled until something cracked. When the door finally burst open, smoke rolled over me. Syra was on the floor, one hand pressed to her chest, her gray hair loose, her face pale with dust and fear. In that moment she was not my ex-wife's mother. She was just a frightened human being who had called me because some part of her still trusted me. I carried her out into the sun. She was lighter than I remembered. The neighbors rushed forward then, as people often do when the hardest part is already done. Someone brought water. Someone called emergency services. I stayed beside her on the pavement, holding her shaking hand while she tried to breathe. Her eyes filled with tears, not just from smoke. She kept saying, "I'm sorry, Beta. I'm so sorry." I told her not to speak, but she squeezed my fingers with surprising strength. The fire department later said it was an electrical short near an old extension board. The smoke had spread faster because boxes were stacked against the wall. At the hospital, Syra was treated for smoke inhalation and stress. The doctor said she would recover, but she needed rest and should not live alone for a few days. I knew what that meant before anyone said it. Meher had moved to another city for work. Her younger brother was abroad. Relatives were the kind who appeared at weddings and funerals, not hospital corridors. I called Meher from outside the emergency ward. My thumb hovered over her number like it was a wound. When she answered, her voice was formal, careful, the voice people use with someone they once loved too much. I told her about her mother. She went silent, then asked which hospital. I could hear her breathing change. I told her Saira was stable. Meher said she would catch the first flight. For the next few hours, I sat beside Saira while the afternoon softened into evening. She slept, woke, apologized, slept again. Once, she looked at me and said she had kept my number saved all these years. I asked why she called me instead of a neighbor. She looked away and said, because when everything went dark, I remembered who used to come running. That sentence stayed inside me like a lamp. Meher arrived after sunset, still in her work clothes, hair coming loose from its clip, eyes red before she even saw her mother. She stopped when she saw me standing near the bed. For a moment, neither of us knew what to do with our hands, our faces, our history. Then she moved past me and fell beside Saira, pressing her forehead to her mother's hand. I stepped back, suddenly feeling like an intruder in a family I had once belonged to. I was about to leave when Saira woke and reached for me too. There we were, the three of us, tied together by a hospital bed and everything we never said. Meher looked at me then, and I saw something break in her expression. Not love exactly. Not forgiveness. Something older. Recognition. She whispered, "Thank you." 2 words. Small enough for the air, heavy enough for the past. Over the next week, life arranged a strange test for all of us. Saira refused to stay with distant relatives and Meher could not immediately leave her job. So I offered my old guest room for a few days. The offer came out before pride could stop it. Meher stared at me as if I had opened a door she thought was sealed forever. She asked if I was sure. I said no, but I was willing. That was the most honest sentence I had spoken in years. Having Saira in my house again felt like living with a ghost who cooked. By the second morning, she was scolding me for having no fresh coriander, rearranging my tea jars, and telling me my curtains looked depressed. The first time she laughed, really laughed, something in the house loosened. Meher visited every evening after work through video calls, then in person when she took leave. At first, our conversations were practical, medicines, appointments, bills, food. But pain has patience. It waits until people are tired enough to tell the truth. One afternoon, while Saira napped, Meher and I sat on the balcony. The city below was loud with horns and vendors, but between us there was a silence so full it had weight. She said she had hated me for not fighting harder for our marriage. I said I had hated her for leaving before I learned how to ask her to stay. She looked down at her hands and said, "We were both proud." I said, "We were both scared." For the first time, neither of us corrected the other. The days that followed did not become magical. Real healing is not music swelling in the background. It is awkward. It is making tea for someone who once returned your wedding ring. It is finding old anger still alive in a corner and choosing not to feed it. It is watching your ex-wife help your ex-mother-in-law walk slowly across your living room and realizing love does not always disappear, sometimes it changes rooms and waits. Saira became the bridge neither of us knew how to build. She told Meher she had been wrong to take sides during the divorce. She told me she had repeated family gossip when she should have protected peace. She cried when she admitted she had once told Meher that a broken marriage was better than a woman feeling unseen, but she had never asked whether I had felt unseen too. Her honesty hurt, but it was clean hurt, the kind that washes infection from a wound. One bright morning, exactly 9 days after the call, we took Saira back to her repaired house. The burned storage room had been cleaned, the faulty wiring replaced, the walls still smelling faintly of paint. Saira stood at the doorway for a long time, touching the frame as if greeting an old friend after a storm. Then she turned to us and said, "Homes do not burn only from fire, sometimes they burn from silence, and sometimes, by God's mercy, people escape before it is too late." Meher and I did not remarry in that moment. We did not fall into each other's arms. That would be too easy, and our story had never been easy. But we began something quieter. We began calling without needing an excuse. We began apologizing for specific things, not just saying sorry like a blanket thrown over broken glass. We began remembering who we had been before disappointment taught us to defend ourselves. Months later, Syra hosted lunch on a clear Sunday afternoon. Sunlight poured through the same kitchen window where she used to wave. She served too much food, as always. Meher sat across from me, smiling at something her mother said, and I noticed a small scar on my shoulder from the day I broke the storage room door. I touched it without thinking. Meher noticed. Her eyes softened. She said that some scars do not remind us of what hurt us, but of who we became when someone needed us. Near the end of that lunch, Syra placed an old photograph on the table. It was from my wedding day, taken before the ceremony, before fear, before pride, before life tested us. In the photo, Meher was laughing, I was looking at her like the world had finally made sense, and Syra was standing behind us with both hands on our shoulders. None of us spoke for a while. Then Syra said she had kept it hidden in a drawer because she could not bear to throw away proof that happiness had once lived in her house. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Asian Anesctory. Sometimes one act of kindness can reopen a door that pain had locked for years. Please comment, kindness came back, if you believe helping someone, even after heartbreak, can change more than one life. That midnight call, though it came under a bright daytime sky in my memory because everything changed in the light, did not give me back the past. It gave me something better, the courage to stop punishing the present for what the past had done. I learned that forgiveness is not always a grand speech. Sometimes it is a man answering a phone. Sometimes it is an old woman trusting the person her family lost. Sometimes it is an ex-wife standing in a hospital corridor, realizing love can survive even when marriage does not. And sometimes, when a door is jammed shut and smoke fills the room, the person who comes running is not the one who owes you anything, but the one whose heart never truly learned how to leave.